On today's show, it's another Ottawa Senators game day at home preseason against the Buffalo Sabres, where Linus Ullmark will make his Sens debut.
And we continue our organizational value rankings with 4 players in the promising NHL talent tier.
We're going to get into all that and more on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can follow us on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available everywhere you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Today is Thursday, September 26th, and Pilsy, talk about a first test. Linus Ullmark in goal in front of not a whole lot of NHLers.
You mean the Rochester Americans? Now, clearly, there's a reason why the Buffalo Sabres are putting this roster together. Most of their NHL players are over in Germany, so you get what you get with this Buffalo Sabres team. But it's going to be interesting to see some of their top prospects up against a lot of Ottawa Senators players that are hoping to make the NHL team out of this training camp. So maybe not the big flashy star power names here, but still some interesting storylines, and getting to see Linus Ullmark for the first time, very exciting.
That's worth the price of admission in itself. But what you also get to see here is potentially the last opportunity for certain bubble players to make an impact. Travis Green mentioning that there will be cuts after this game. The Senators will be separating, I'd imagine, into the AHL group with Coach Dave Bell, and then you'll get the NHL group, which the big question will be, how many extra bodies are they going to keep? Will Carter Yakemchuk go back to junior after tonight's game, or will he get an extended look towards the end of training camp? So many more questions we'll get to in segment 2, but let's look at the lineup for tonight's game. In Buffalo, they just announced their roster. I think we should call them Rochester for the rest of this show, but I think you're going to maybe recognize one name. Consta Hellenius, the first round pick, 12th or 13th overall this NHL draft. He's 18 years old, but he's like the only name on this list. Did you even recognize any other names here?
Well, a couple of the other guys we have covered in our prospect profiles, Ross.
Noah Ostland.
Yeah, Noah Ostland. And I believe Isaac Rosen we also covered as well. So those are pretty much the only guys. And then Felix Sandstrom was a goalie with the Flyers for a while. So I'm not sure if he's starting tonight or not, but he is on the roster.
I'm honestly surprised that this meets the minimum veteran requirement for the NHL.
Wait a second. Yeah, there's no way this does. There's zero chance. How many of these guys have even played in the NHL?
Nobody.
Felix Sandstrom.
And yeah, Felix
Jack
Sandstrom.
Rathbone, I think, has had a handful of games. But
that's it. Well, they must. I mean, the NHL wants Buffalo in Europe. Like, they want a team in Europe, so Buffalo's there.
So they're making exceptions for the Buffalo Sabres?
Wow. Somebody needs to talk to the league about this one. We're on the case.
Yeah.
Once all of our resources go from helping the Giroux find their Land Rover,
yes,
we're going to be on this case afterwards, because this is a whole lot of gobbledygook right now.
Well, why didn't they follow in the steps of the Ottawa Senators and pluck a 38-year-old from the KHL? That's what they should have done. Give jobs to veteran players. It's the right thing to do.
Sabres legend Dustin Tokarski could have been the most experienced player on this Sabres team tonight.
Where's Michael Pekka?
He would probably be the best player on the ice for the Sabres. Now, no disrespect. Obviously, these are young players. We're just poking fun because it is kind of comedic how few NHL players are coming to Ottawa for the Rochester, don't call me Buffalo, Sabre Americans. But what you are going to see is an opportunity for Ottawa's younger players to show that they can make a huge impact in a game like this. Like, I'm looking at that fourth line, and we'll pull up the lines first, actually, before we dive deep into it. But like, Jan Yannick could go off for another 4 points. Who's to say he can't? And if you're watching on YouTube, that photo of Shane Pinto is everybody's reaction when you saw the quality of the lineups for tonight's game. That being said, Shane Pinto is in the lineup. He's centering Angus Crookshank and
this
Tyler
is not
Boucher.
the right way to read lines out, Ross. Go check the Twitter poll.
We've been doing this for 6 years. I ain't changing now. I'm an old grumpy man stuck in my ways, but I do clarify in the middle or centering or between. I make it very clear that the first name I say is the center because you can't have you don't have an arm without the body. The center is the key.
I don't. They
don't call it the wing of gravity. They call it the center of gravity.
Well, we're not arguing whether they call it the wing of gravity or the center of gravity. I think this is the easiest way to make my point, Ross. If you have to clarify where you're starting, you're probably not starting at the point where most people are used to starting.
Adam Gaudette is centering Nikolai Kulemin and Zach McEwen. We've got Zach Ostapchuk, more like Zach Ostap, center between Noah Gregor and Matthew Highmore, and Jan Yannick getting a chance at fourth line center between Cole Reinhardt and Xavier Bourgault. On defense, Tyler Kleven with Carter Yakemchuk, Philip Roos with Nicholas Matin-Palo, and we've got Donovan Sabrango with Kalen Addison. In goal, Linus Ullmark and Dustin Tokarski. Those are two revenge games, former Sabers, different times though. Give me a locked on player to watch and what you're most excited to see in tonight's game.
Locked on player for me has to be number 14, Jan Yannick. Our guy Ali put Yannick as the X Factor player for the Ottawa Senators. So big expectations coming Jan's way. So I want to see if he can back up a 4-point performance from the first preseason game. So let's see what Yannick can do here.
I'm naturally inclined to say Zach Ostapchuk just because that is a big battle for that fourth line center position for the Ottawa Senators. Based on this lineup, though, like you got to think they're giving Adam Gaudette just as much of a look. He's got the familiarity with Travis Green as well from Vancouver. Like, I don't know if this is just a two-horse race. I think from a Sens fan perspective, you're looking at those as a little bit younger, a little more exciting. Maybe you can see a longer-term future, but don't discredit the fact that Adam Gaudette scored 44 goals last year in the AHL and also knows the coach. So you look at him just because Gaudette's paired with McEwen, right? Like McEwen's going to be a fourth line, maybe fifth line, like call up or a reserve type player. But I'm interested to see everybody down the middle because Pinto now, how are you going to control a line? No Batherson on his wing like in game one. We know that the vets and Pinto, funny enough, we're calling him a vet now, 2019 draft pick, like drafted a year before Angus or a year after Angus Crookshank. Like let that sink in for just a second. And yet he's the vet on that line, but he obviously is going to kind of get his gears turning more and more as camp goes on. But there's a whole lot of intrigue in this lineup, especially on the back end for me with Carter Yakemchuk. That'll be the last guy I highlight here because we saw how he did when he had Thomas Chabot as a safety valve, as a guy who he could kind of lean on in situations. Well, now, basically, what I'm gathering from this is that Travis Green is saying, look, that's cute that you're comfortable and that you can play with a vet, but if you're going to make this team, you're not playing on the top pair right away. You're not playing top four. If you're going to make this team and even get so much as a 1 to 9 game tryout to not burn the year, you're likely playing with Tyler Kleven or a third pair guy. So can you play in that situation? I'll be watching for that tonight.
Yeah, that's certainly interesting, Ross. But do you think there's a chance where Travis Green puts Tyler Kleven only a handful of NHL games with a rookie Carter Yakemchuk together for a long period of time in the NHL? Or if that were to happen, would it just strictly be the 9 games? Because even like we talked about, even a pair of Kleven and JBD seems like a very youthful bottom pair that you're a little nervous about.
I would say there's a 0% chance, clip this, that Carter Yakemchuk plays the whole year in Ottawa. I think it's 9 games max.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not even that convinced it's going to be the 9 games. I know people are really excited after that overtime goal, as you should. I'm not trying to be Pilsy raining on the parade here, but there is a lot of work in other parts of Yakemchuk's game that I'd like for him to really hone in junior. And I'm just not at a point where I'm trying to rush a 7th overall defenseman to the NHL. If they want to do the 9 games, that's fine by me, but I think it would be better for Yakemchuk just to head back to junior. I mean, he got 2 preseason games, so that's a nice little taste here.
And cuts are coming tomorrow, so we will see what's next for Carter Yakemchuk. And Tyler Kleven, too. Like, it seems to me it's his spot to lose on the back end, third pair lefty, but it's not locked up. I think he needs to show a little bit more. I'm still waiting for the first K-Train open ice hit. We have not seen that yet in his, 15 games?
I bet we could see it tonight, Ross, especially with not a lot of, respected NHL or none really respected NHL veterans on the Sabres side. I think you're going to see Tyler Kleven throw the body around a little more.
I think that's an important piece for what he needs to bring through the next week of camp for the Ottawa Senators to be comfortable having a third pair with Kleven and insert right shot defenseman here, whether it's JVD, Hamonic, Yakemchuk, or maybe a dark horse that we aren't even considering yet. But lots to watch for tonight. We kind of got into that now. Linus Ullmark's debut. Both groups, though, practice today. And with what we just mentioned, a lot of inexperience in the NHL lineup. Well, the other group had some interesting line combos. We'll tell you what they were next. And our organizational value rankings, we are into the top 20. In the description below, we've got the list of all 64 to number 20 so far. And the Sunday before the week that begins the regular season, we're going to premiere our entire OVRs. I've clipped each one out of each show, and it's just going to be good vibes in the chat. You can come hang out. That'll be on Sunday, October 6th, leading in to that week. All right, lots to get to. This is Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the official ticketing app of the Locked On Podcast Network, and Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks, it makes it easier to get tickets for sports, comedy, theater, and more. Ross, I used Game Time to go to the Toronto Blue Jays game last night. It was a good one, big win for the Jays, and I was able to find my tickets very easily.
That's like the memes. Who was it? Chris Paul hits a jumper. He's down by 41 now.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really affect their postseason chances, but it's still a good win. If you go to the game, you want to see a W.
Well, when you go to the game, you want the cheapest tickets, so that's why you're at Game Time.
So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
It's also time for sports. The fall's here. We know the NFL's already set, and FanDuel is your spot to go for all of the action. You can also get your preseason bets in for the NHL. They've got all sorts of futures. If you're not one that wants to ride the highs and lows of each and every game, futures are the best way to do that because you can bet on awards. You can bet on player goal totals this season, like Brady Tkachuk. Brady Tkachuk's over-under for goals right now is set at 36.5, minus 114 for both ways. So which way are you leaning? Will Brady Tkachuk tie or exceed his career high in goals this season? How about player points? Will Brady Tkachuk get over or under 81.5 points? Will Brady Tkachuk be a point-per-game player? FanDuel is where you can get all the latest, greatest odds. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game or before the season, you can check out everything at FanDuel. And because the season's starting, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. It's the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Pillsy, this guy, he puts up a poll today on Twitter, just trying to discredit what I've been doing for 6 years straight.
Well, I'm just getting people's opinion. It's a debate between us, so I thought, hey, what do the people think? And I think people have made it very clear the correct way to read the lines out.
There's dozens of us, though, that do understand the value of putting the centerman first.
Congrats to all dozens of you. Ross, speaking of the FanDuel ad, though, guess the line. Oh, it just changed live here.
Whoa.
What do you think the Sens money line is on FanDuel? Tonight.
Oh, well, the Leafs in game 1, where the Sens got that OT win. Go check out our reaction episode. Carter Yakemchuk, OT winner. Is that good? The Leafs were minus 450 in that game. But look, the Ottawa Senators aren't dressing like the Leafs did. They're A team that night. So I'm going to go with minus 295 for the Ottawa Senators.
Close. Minus 260.
Okay. Wow. No, you can't. There's no value to that.
You gotta mix that into a parlay if you want to get something out of it.
If you want, or get the puck line, have some fun, minus 1.5. But if the Ottawa Senators,
that's plus money, Ross, plus 102, minus 1.5. So
I mean,
there you go. Yeah, that's actually a good bet. I'm gonna join you on that one.
Yeah, let's have some fun with that one. Also, the line would have been ridiculous if it was the other Sens group. Group 2 just practice. We already talked about the game day lineup and the battles that behold within it. But this Group 2 lineup is actually giving a pretty good sense of what the Senators' top 3 lines will be coming out of camp. Now, the only real question here is, where does Pinto fit in to these 3 lines? But I could very well see this being the lineup. Of course, this is just how they took turns in the line rushes. You know that the Norris, Perron, Batherson line would be the second line rather than third, but you've got Norris between Perron and Batherson, Stützle with Tkachuk and Giroux, and then they've got Ridley Gregg and Nick Cousins, who've been paired together, it seems like, quite often at training camp, with Michael Amadio, who's living up to his name as kind of the Swiss Army knife. It feels like, Billsy, every single practice he's on a different line.
Yeah, but that's why they got him, right? So I think it's good to see where he has the best chemistry. I think likely, Ross, Greg is just a placeholder for Pinto. I think that Cousins, Pinto, and Amadio could be your third line. Although I was shocked to see, well, I mean, we don't know this for sure. We're speculating, but Cousins on anything other than a fourth line combo is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I think so too. And maybe there's a world where Greg and Cousins stay together as a pair, and then you're looking at Pinto, Amadio, and then insert two other players in there. We assume one of them being Noah Gregor, the other one, whether it's Ostapchuk, Yannick, Highmore, Gaudette, really a whole host of other players. Stephen Halliday, I think, could still be in the mix, although him being the top centerman in Belleville, I think long-term is what's best for his development. So there is a spot. We've agreed to that, right? There's at least one spot, maybe 2, up for grabs for the forward ranks for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I would agree.
The almost one is Noah Gregor, but the way that he's been kind of spoken about in the one-way contract, I'd be surprised if he's at the very least not the 13th forward. And I mean, we got to throw McEwen's name in there too. He's on a one-way contract, so there is an opportunity for him to, again, even if it's the 13th forward, to make the team.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I would say the biggest battle is the fourth line center.
It's going to be fun to watch. What about the decor, Pilsy? The Group 2 decor. Sanderson, Hamonic, Chabot, Jensen, Davies, JBD, and Hamara with Gannett. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, everyone, let's keep in mind, most likely Hamonic is just a Zub placeholder. Zub, Travis Green mentioned, still out with a lower body injury. That's getting looked at. I don't think it's going to be anything serious. That's positive Pilsy speaking. I am not a doctor. And then Davies getting a chance with JBD. That's interesting because everyone seems to think that Kleven's third left shot defenseman pairing is kind of a lock, but we've been hyping up Davies a little bit here too, so maybe Travis Green is trying to see if he was to be with JBD, how it would go. And then Chabot Jensen, I think that is the correct second pair, so we'll see if they have some chemistry.
Looking forward to seeing how this all shakes out. Tomorrow on Locked On Senators, we will dive into the roster cuts. As of now, only the junior eligible players have been sent back, and we should have a quick word on that because it's official news now. We've been telling you for the last week, hinting at it, that Gabriel Eliasson has been traded in the Ontario Hockey League, his rights from Niagara to the Barrie Colts. And speaking with the Athletics, Scott Wheeler just asked him, hey, Barrie, are they supposed to be good this year? He says they're a top 5 team in the Ontario Hockey League. They've got a couple really high-end prospects that are eligible for next year's draft. And they've got Cole Baudouin, Ottawa boy. Gabriel told us that he and Cole Baudouin have the same agent, so there's a bit of chemistry or whatnot there. And they just traded for Emil Hemming, first-round pick from the Dallas Stars. So I think this is a great landing spot for Eliasson, and you're going to be able to go see him in your neck of the woods.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to make it out to a couple Barrie Colts games. That's going to be interesting. And I think the decision to go to the OHL was the right move for Gabriel Eliasson. I mean, college hockey, not really conducive to his style of play. Let's just say that. And then the USHL, I'm not sure what
that's more like a feeder league. I think if you're going USHL, you're going to college afterwards.
Yeah, that's fair. So
unless
I think
we will get to another Sens prospect just got moved in the USHL.
True. Yeah, I think the OHL is a great spot for him, and I'm excited to see him in Barrie.
It's going to be awesome to see. Philip Nordberg was traded. He spent last year in the USHL with Billsy. Can you help me out on this one?
Muskegon, I believe.
Muskegon, yes, thank you. But he has been moved as well. So he's going to be playing this upcoming season with the Sioux Falls Stampede. I think they're just trying to get him as much ice time in as good of a situation as they can. He struggled in the playoffs. He struggled a bit down the stretch. Long-term project, I think, here with Philip Nordberg. Great guy. Awesome. I love chatting with him in person at Sens Development Camp last year. He's one of those big, physical, mean defensemen as well. 6'5", 212, and he just turned 20 years old. So he's an overager, though, in the USHL now. It's TikTok time to really make an impact this season, right?
This is a big year for him, yeah. Especially after getting moved. It's kind of like, okay, let's see what you got.
And it's almost unfair that he has that second round pick moniker. He was the last pick in the second round. If it weren't for the Seattle Kraken, and that was their first year in the league, 64th overall used to be a third round pick.
It's true.
And now it's a second. So anyways, we like Philip Nordberg. Looking forward to seeing what he does this year in Sioux Falls. On the other side, organizational value rankings, and where did Pierre Dorion just surface? That and more next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Mary J's. Mary J's is a locally owned cannabis dispensary in the Ottawa area. Started off with 3 best friends making a decision to go for their dreams, and through hard work and dedication, they got 4 stores in the Ottawa area. You can check them out at Riverside South, Orleans, Greeley, and Russell. They got the best and newest products in the market, and they're adding new stuff to the menu every week to keep it fresh. They got competitive pricing. They're going to price match any store in Ottawa. That means you're guaranteed to get the best price around when you shop at Mary J's. And they've got great customer service with friendly bud tenders who are always ready to help you out. One of the owners, Dashy, absolute beauty, and a die-hard Sens fan. Go to one of the stores, say what up to Dashy, and pick his brain about the Sens and all the latest, greatest products that Mary J's has to offer. Check out their website and their loyalty card. Ross, I cannot wait to go say what up to Dashy when we go to the nation's capital.
2 weeks today, home opener will be there at Mary J's. All right, today's episode also brought to you by Indeed. When you need to hire, you need Indeed. We're driven by the search for better. But when you come to making a job search, don't search at all. Match with Indeed. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster either. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality candidates compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. They have over 350 million global monthly visitors and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. That's Indeed.com/locked-on. Go there right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Senators. That's Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. right, Pilsy. Sorry for burying the lead. The Senators game tonight against the Buffalo Sabres will be at 7 o'clock Eastern at the Canadian Tire Center. I also buried the lead because Pierre Dorion has been hired. Pause.
About time.
As a TV analyst in Quebec. Now, I'm curious because we saw this a couple of years ago with Guy Boucher, but he had something in his contract where he didn't talk about the Ottawa Senators. I have a feeling we might see a similar thing with Pierre Dorion, but all jokes aside, I think he's actually going to be really good at this because we know he's got takes.
I mean, I think at the very least it's going to be entertaining.
Isn't that what you want in a TV analyst?
Exactly, yeah. Pierre Dorion has always been entertaining. That I say with full confidence, as Sens fans know that. Whether it's good or bad is in question. But
we've never questioned Pierre Dorion, the person. I would love to have beers with that guy.
Yeah, great dude. Every time we talked to him, he was always good to us, and we got to kind of informally chat with him at Dev Camp a couple times, and the quotes he gave us were all time. So
I mean,
I'm happy for Pierre.
He told us on this show that he thought about kidnapping Connor McDavid when he was playing in the playoffs in Vegas, and he's like, I went to Vegas, and he looked at us, he goes, on personal. It was unbelievable. He's a quote machine, and I think he's going to do really well there. Look, nobody ever wants a man to lose his job, and I think that him having a job as an analyst, I think is going to be very entertaining. He was hired by BPM Sports. It's a radio station in Quebec. They've got a station in Gatineau, and you can guarantee my French is going to get better this year. I might do another La Brigade podcast with the fellas over there. I was a little nervous when my French isn't perfect. I haven't been practicing very much in years. It's going to get better this year because I will be tuning in for Pierre Dorion appearances on BPM Sports.
Well, I'll rely on you as a translator then, because my grade 9 French doesn't get me very far, unfortunately.
All right, our organizational value rankings, if you've been following over the past couple of weeks, we count down every player in the organization based on their value to the team. So think if you're playing NHL on a video game, the trade bar. So it takes into account, I almost said height. It doesn't.
If you're the Ottawa Senators, it sure does.
I had Pierre Dorion on the brain, so automatically it went to height. So it takes into account your age, your potential, what you are right now. Like, you have to value a guy who's in the NHL a bit more than a prospect to a certain degree. So we had our debates all summer long. We've made our list, checked it 3 times, twice and then an extra. And now here we are in the top 20, where we have entered tier number 4, number 5. Promising young talent. And coming in at number 19 is a player whose trajectory from being drafted 39th overall in 2021 to where he is now is pretty impressive, to say the least. Zach Ostapchuk is number 19 on our organizational value rankings. Pilsy, why?
This is a player that has a lot of tools in his tool bag. Like, he's kind of a great all-around player. He plays good defensively. He's able to chip in offensively, like we saw with his goal in the preseason game winner shorthanded. Not a big deal. And last season with the Belleville Senators, in 69 games, he had 17 goals, 11 assists, good for 28 points. And Zach Ostapchuk has already had a taste of NHL games. He got 7 games last year. No points, unfortunately, but I think that was a good learning experience for him. And I think he's someone that, we've talked about it, he's in the running for that job at fourth line center, even though he's so young and doesn't have as much experience as some of the other guys.
Well, one thing that was so cool, just because you mentioned his NHL experience, remember his mom, Charlene, flew in for it, and there was the story done on that. I think he's had, an upbringing with a single mother, and it just means that much more when she's able to watch her son succeed and get to that top level where he was able to play in the NHL. And Charlene, that's not the only time you're going to see your son play in the NHL. Zach Ostapchuk just has so many translatable tools, like you mentioned, in his box that he can play different roles. I think you could see him in a fourth line center position where other guys who we might talk about later in this show, you want them to be in certain situations to get the most of them. Whereas I think Zach Ostapchuk, the best one word you can use to describe him is adaptable. He can play wing. He can play center. He's 6'3", 205 pounds. He beat the crap out of Matt Rempe in junior. Like, he can fight. He can do everything that a coach wants in a player. I really see him having a long career in the NHL just based on his adaptability. And it shows in his rise up of our organizational value rankings. It's our 5th year doing it. He's been in 4 of them. He went from 31 to 23 to 22 to 19. That's what you want to see for a second round pick. And 2 years left on his deal. I think I'm confident in saying by the end of these 2 years, he'll be an NHLer full time.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement for sure. It might even happen this year, Ross. So we'll see. But certainly, we're both big Zach Ostapchuk fans.
What do you think the best route is for him this year? Because we talk about how he's in the mix for a spot, but we talk about how he can play 4th line center. But is that preferred? Do you prefer him to play 4th line center in the NHL if he's just getting by, or would you rather him be in the middle 6 in Belleville, maybe getting some more offensive touches on the puck?
Zach Ostapchuk for me is a little bit different than Crooker. I know I've took my stance on Crooker in the NHL, but for me,
similar to Stephen Halliday, I think as well.
Who, Ostapchuk or Crooker?
No, with Crooker, like those two guys, I don't think you want them in a 4th line NHL role.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Whereas I think Zach Ostapchuk can thrive in a 4th line role, but I really wouldn't be that upset or disappointed if he spends another year in Belleville, Ross. He only has the 1 year there, and I think him being in a top 6 role in Belleville would do his development a lot of good. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily saying that he's not ready or couldn't handle a full season in the NHL as a 4th line center. So it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out for him.
Well, time will tell. As we're recording here on September 26th, he's still certainly in the mix to be in that 4th line center position. All right, coming in at number 18 on our organizational value rankings, an even more steep riser. It's Stephen Halliday, 22 years old, was a late draft pick, not in his year, but the year after, 6'3", 214 pounds, and my goodness, this guy can dish the puck.
Yeah, I've learned that Stephen Halliday is a disher. In last year with Ohio State, in 38 games, he had 10 goals and 26 dishes for 36 points. But obviously that's impressive, almost a point per game at the college level. That's sweet. But I think more impressive, Ross, was his transition to the AHL. In 10 regular season games with Belleville, he had 5 assists, disher. And then in the playoffs is where he shined, though. In 7 games, 2 goals, 7 assists. I was at a bunch of those games live in Belleville, and I would say arguably he was the Belleville Senators' best forward, if not best player in those playoffs. So Stephen Halliday has a lot of expectations long-term. I would say maybe not this year, but I think this is a guy that we're going to see the Ottawa Senators are really going to take a shine to as he plays more and more.
We've come a long way since we called him Stefan the first time we talked about him after he was selected in the 4th round of the 2022 NHL draft. And now, I mean, hey, Steven, let's go from 47 on our OVRs right after that draft up to 27 last year. And now he's up to 18 and rising fast. At the time of this recording, he's played in 1 preseason game, 2 dishes in that one. So,
yep.
This guy just finds ways onto the score sheet every single night. He's probably got one of the highest hockey IQs in the organization. This guy just thinks the game at such an elite level that it makes up for maybe a bit of a lack of foot speed. But you just see so many reasons to believe that he'll succeed at the next level. And if you counted him out, you probably counted him out from the transition to the AHL. So if you've been wrong that time, well, shame on you if you're wrong again.
Yeah, and Stephen Halliday was one of those guys that when the Senators drafted him, the online scouting community really applauded it and seemed to think that there was a lot of value at his draft position, which was
101?
104 in the 4th round in 2022. So this is the type of guy you're hoping to get in the 4th round.
Isn't he like one of the most all-time leading scorers in USHL history? He's 12th, if I'm not mistaken, but played a lot less games than some of the other guys.
I think the stat you're looking for, Ross, I think he's the Dubuque Fighting Saints all-time leader.
Well, it's not bad to be 12th all-time in points in the AHL as well. A guy named Kyle Connor.
USHL.
USHL. What did I say?
AHL.
Oh,
He's
nice.
not quite there. He's good in the AHL, Ross, but not quite there.
Maybe this year
Yeah.
could be the year for Stephen Halliday. He's like the player to watch in Belleville for me this year. I think a full season down there. And the last day, I know we've kind of, beaten the dead horse a little bit with this statement, but it bears repeating once again. When Dave Bell told us that other veteran AHL players are coming into his office and saying, "Can I play with Steven?" That's the best endorsement that you can get as a young hockey player, is that guys want to be on your line. Stephen Halliday comes in at number 18 on our organizational value rankings. Coming in at number 17 in between the pipes, that's Mad Sogaard, 23 years old, 6'7", 198 pounds. Pilsy, he finally makes a move off number 19 on our list.
Yes, yeah. Mad Sogaard was 19th on our organizational value rankings 2021, 2022, and 2023. He started at 35, so a good jump for him. In 32 games with the Belleville Senators last year, he had an 18-9-3 record, a 245 goals against, and a 916 save percentage. Ross, what I like most about his playing time last year with the Belleville Senators was he was great in the playoffs. Now, not as good numbers in the regular season, 246 and a 910, but he was really the backbone of that team, and he kept them in a lot of games.
Yes, he did. And it sucks that the injury forced him to be unavailable for the final game of the playoffs. I think Levy did a great job filling in, but that was his net, and it is again this year. He signed a 2-year contract extension this summer, where the second year is a one-way contract. So they're banking basically on him replacing Anton Forsberg after this upcoming season. And I think you're looking at a big year where he's going to have more help than he's ever had in front of him. I think he has to be a 920 or better goalie. Like, I know that's a very high bar. I really think that he can do it. And I know that the NHL stints have not gone well for Matt Sogaard. I think he'd be the first to admit it. But the worst thing that you could do is give up on him early.
Yeah.
Ben Bishop is way too fresh in my memory as a guy who came to Ottawa at 24, only played a handful of games when they were in trouble because Leonard and Anderson, there were some injuries. He gets called in, and then they move on from him. He goes to Stanley Cup Finals 2 years later with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I think especially, like, we talk about how big players take longer to develop because they're growing into their bodies and all that. I mean, a goalie in itself takes longer to develop, and then you add on top that he's 6'7". I think you have to at least give him these 2 years. Now, next year, you're paying him NHL salary in the AHL. I don't know if he needs waivers after next year. That's why this is a huge year for him with this organization.
And Ross, especially with goalies, sometimes it just takes longer. Like, look at Jacob Markstrom as an example, 6'6" goalie, drafted very high in the draft, 31st overall by the Panthers in 2008. And he didn't really become a prime starting goalie until very late in his career. And look how he's playing now. So sometimes it just takes a little while for goalies to kind of enter their prime in the NHL.
Humongous year. Let me say it again. There's maybe no player under more pressure to have a huge year for Belleville than Matt Sogaard. He needs to be a leader on that team. I expect him to play 40-plus games and really be dialed in so that he's ready to make the jump for 2025-26. All right, coming in at number 16, it's the K-Train. Choo-choo! Tyler Kleven coming in. The highest he's ever been on this list. He was 18 last year, and then 22 in 2022, 22 in 21, and 33 after being drafted in the second round of the 2020 NHL draft. He's, you guessed it, 22 years old, 6'4", 200 pounds, and I think we're going to hopefully see a huge step forward next year.
And I think the biggest endorsement for Tyler Kleven, Ross, is
Pierre Dorion saying if he could adopt the son, it would be him.
Sure. That's a big one. And Pierre stating very boldly that Tyler Kleven is an untouchable and will not be a part of a Yakemchuk trade.
So was Matt Sogaard. He mentioned both those guys.
Yep, rightfully so. But Tyler Kleven in 53 games last year with the Buffalo Senators had 5 goals, 16 assists. He was a plus 14. Yes, where I was going with that is the biggest endorsement for Kleven is I think a lot of us thought the Ottawa Senators were going to try to find a veteran left shot defenseman that they could bring in on a PTO or a minimum contract just to have a little safety net there. But they didn't really do that. We talked about Jeremy Davies being brought in, but he's not really that veteran guy. I still consider him an option for the third pair left shot side, but I think they really see Tyler Kleven as being ready, and they want to give him a full opportunity in the NHL this year. It's his job to lose, essentially, is what I'm saying.
But that being said, I'm like how I am with Ostapchuk. Although Ostapchuk is 1 year younger than Kleven, 1 more year isn't the worst thing in the world in the AHL. Playing top pair, whether it's with Matin Palo or someone else down there. Like he went to school for 3 years. So even though he's older, that was still his rookie season in the AHL. I know he got the tryout at the end of the year type thing, burned the year off with the Sens 2 seasons ago, but like he doesn't need waivers. You're able to call him up and bring him down. I just don't think it's the end of the world if he doesn't make this team this year. Next year, I'll be singing a different tune. He's going into a contract year.
Yeah.
I think that it's all in his court. If he makes the team, it's all on him. But if he doesn't, I don't think it's time to move on. I think next year would be the final opportunity. It's like, we need you to crack the roster. You're 23. Like, let's go. But this year, I think is kind of the grace period where it's like, it's yours if you can handle it. But if not, let's get you so that next year, it's no doubt, not even a question that you're ready to go.
I think for me, though, Ross, where I view Kleven differently, and you might disagree with this, but I really see Tyler Kleven as being a great third pair NHL defenseman. Not to say that he couldn't play top 4, but I don't really see that as the prime spot to have him. So in my mind, you want him to be that shutdown physical third pair defenseman. And that's where I think he should stay for at least the next upcoming years or to start his NHL career. Why not let him get all the time possible developing in that role and learning from other NHL players and getting that experience?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. No, I'd love to see Tyler Kleven make this team. I'm just trying to temper the expectations a little bit for now. But I love what Tyler Kleven brings. There's a reason why he's number 16. Like that, there's 18 skaters on an NHL lineup at any given time. And if he's at 16, that's a real good spot to be on our organizational value rankings that will continue tomorrow as we have finished this young promising talent tier. And if you want to see all the tiers and everything we've done so far, it's in the description below. All right, Pillsy, final thoughts on today's show.
Final thoughts for me is the winners of our seat prize with Gator Promotions. Enjoy the game tonight. I mean, that's a pretty awesome prize, and I'm jealous. I'm a little bit jealous, not gonna lie. I'm also jealous. Sorry if this is your final thought, Ross, but this just popped in my head. Of all the Sens fans that got to be at our GCP last night for the Amazon filming, I can't wait to see what comes out of that. There was a lot of absolute beauties at that event, and we appreciate everyone taking pictures at the Locked On GCP jersey.
It's so great. And remember, today's a Sens game day. If you go to the GCP, say you listen to the podcast, 10% off your bill. What's better than that? Who's got better than us? Nobody. Shout out to Will and Seb, the 2 winners of those tickets.
Nice.
We appreciate you all. And I love when I don't know if they're just gassing me up when I say it, but when I gave them the tickets, they say, I listen to the show every day, and I appreciate it going to true citizens out there. We appreciate everybody who's in the mix. We will do more of those giveaways throughout the season. For today, we say goodbye. That's Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you for watching, listening, engaging with the show. It means the world to us. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.